Yeah, well, you continue with your morning program of Choice 180 Degrees here on SABC News International. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, South African President Jacob Zuma's 2.4 billion rand initiative to slow job losses by helping companies boost training is already in motion. Job losses in the country have exceeded 300,000 for the first half of this year on an already high unemployment rate. Now, according to Edutouch, billions are spent each year on training, and yet millions are also wasted as a result of poor management, supervision, or inept training. Now, the CEO of Edutouch, Mr. Rob Dersley, joins us now in the studio. Rob, welcome to 180 Degrees.
Thank you, Desiree.
What prompted this discussion? And perhaps while telling us that, tell us about Edutouch, what they do.
Edutouch has positioned itself to fill the gaps where e-learning and lecture-based training is not being that successful in the country. There are large pockets of employees who are not able to benefit from e-learning because of the fact that they don't have access to computers, and there's just an intellectual gap. And then lecture-based training is actually quite costly and not that effective because there's a host of reasons for the fact that it becomes more expensive or is more expensive. So Edutouch has positioned itself to, in fact, fill those gaps, and we've developed training methodologies which is embedded in a hub of technology that has actually had brilliant outcomes with mining industries, the cleaning industries, and so forth and so on. For example, in Kapanong mine at Anglo Gold, we have slashed, according to Andries Oberholzer, the intervention has really reduced their costs of training dramatically, and the outcomes of training are substantially better.
And more accessible.
And more accessible, and that's a very important point, is to make training accessible. You know, people need to repeat learning, and they need to be able to have access to training in the workplace. So say, for example, somebody needs to go and do a task and they just can't quite remember how to do that task properly. So instead of them going to fulfill this task not knowing exactly what to do and endangering their lives and the lives of those around them, they're now able to go and access training on that specific topic, and not only access training but also test their knowledge after that small training session that they've accessed. So before they go and do their task, they actually know how competent they are, and then there's no excuse to say, I did not know. Or
Rob, we could go into the processes, but that's not what we're talking about today. We've already had that discussion. But you reckon, and I was talking about what brought about the discussion, and it's because of an editorial that was published through Edutouch. You reckon that the process of the as a $2.4 billion bid is flawed. How so?
Well, government has put 2.4 billion rand forward, which they're using from the UIF fund to train people over a 3-month period so that they're not retrenched. In other words, they're actually almost suspended from the company, and these funds are funding them to be trained for a 3-month period. And what the concern is that at the end of the 3-month period, if the economy hasn't improved and the company is not able to keep these people, then they are going to be retrenched anyway. Now, Brian Butani of IHS Insight was quoted recently to say that and he actually captured the phrase quite well. He said, when people are not working, their skills are decaying. So in essence, what we're doing is we're training people at the cost of 2.4 billion rand, and understanding that the probability of the economy recovering by then, so that the companies will be in a position to keep the people, is highly unlikely. Senior economists are telling us that South Africa is lagging world trends on economic turnaround to overcome the recession.
What you're saying then gives birth to quite, I think, a pertinent discussion then around the fact that the presidency, the incoming leadership, put in place a planning ministry, and you'd like to think that they would foresee issues like that. Doesn't this affect them in a way? Your opinion that some things have been, there's been an oversight?
Well, you know, the question is, what could the money have been spent better? And I think it could definitely have been spent far more effectively. You know, the effect is that 2.4 billion rand will be spent to really keep people in their workplaces for 3 months, and that's the end of it. And I mean, how can you spend 2.4 billion rand training people when they are more than likely not going to be able to be retained, and they will forget the training that they've received? So it's like taking water and pouring it in, a cup of water and pouring it into the ocean. It's a waste of time.
There's an assertion that the training is already in motion. Where has it started?
I haven't heard of any particular companies. I do know that it is being managed by the CCMA, and you know, various seaters are being asked to also bring some funding forward. But it kick-started yesterday, so we're yet to see what the outcomes are.
So essentially what it means is that you're employed while you are unemployed.
I would say so, yes.
How does it affect the ability of the UIF to disperse funds?
Well, I think we all know how important the UIF is. Look, it is partly there to assist people in instances when they are not employed, but we are targeting a very small percentage of those people who are threatened in terms of losing their jobs in recessionary period. So why aren't we looking at everybody? And you know,
which is almost everyone in the economy.
So you know, I don't have access to the total impact of 2.4 billion rand being taken out of UIF. However, one can extend your you know, imagination and start asking questions. What about those who will lose their jobs in the future? And how bad will it still get? And what kind of planning has been put in place to address this?
But you don't find that one could ask the same questions about Edutouch and say, in this kind of environment, you're training people, and where will they use those skills that they're amassing from your kind of training?
Well, I think, you know, what's important is if we look at where the key problems lie and where huge costs are being incurred as a result of non-training. There are, you know, masses of problems throughout South Africa. If we look at the services, water, sewage, electricity. To use an example, if we are not maintaining our services properly, the consequential costs of not maintaining them properly are substantial. Now, one could say, okay, what if we could take the effects of those costs where skills are not being properly applied, or skills don't exist, and actually plow that back into training? And I think the comparative differences between the actual impact as a result of lack of skills to the costs incurred as a result of the lack of skills should be taken note of. There's another example. I can give you lots of examples. We're not going to go into
that, but that's a discussion we'll pick up on the next time we talk. Rob Dersley, thank you so much for making the time. Rob is the CEO of Edutouch, and important discussions that we're having with him, and we'll continue to as things unfold. But we continue with the show. An epidemic is wiping out